Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited that you all are here today on the Positive Psychology Hour. We are going to be discussing the 7 attributes of the strength-based practitioner with Ruth Pearce. Ruth is one of my favorite people to interview. I just love talking with her, her zest and her depth of knowledge and her practical ways in which she uses strengths excite and tantalize my curiosity and my love of learning. So let me tell you a little bit about our talk today. Ruth Pearce is a group coach, and she works with the VIA Institute on character, product, and practice development. She's a consultant in that way, and she returns to the JCTC to explore the 7 attributes of strength-based practitioner. This conversation is based on the recently published Frontiers in Psychology paper that she co-authored with VIA Education Director Ryan Nemec over at the VIA Character Strengths Institute. In this session, she's going to share with us concepts of embodiment, education, energizing, empowering, exploration, connections, and cultivation, as well as the case study of the 13 In It Together coaching co-founders who bring strength-based coaching to groups. Learn which of the 7 attributes you already have in your toolbox, as well as the next step, which is what I'm so excited about, in at least one of those attributes to benefit yourself and others. And a little bit about Ruth. I love the credentials after your name. JD, PMP, CCT, ACC, CIC. Ruth Pearce does it all. She runs In It Together group coaching as part of A Lever Long Enough, which is a ALLELCC project motivator, supporting the coaching managers and team members to transform workplaces into communities. Gosh, do we need that? She sees character strengths as a powerful way to forge connections between team members. Ruth's book, Be a Project Motivator, Unlock the Secrets of Strength-Based Project Management, based on 20 years of direct experience in the field and extensive research, was published in 2018. And in addition to doing all of these things and running her own business, Ruth serves as the VIA Product and Practice Development Consultant, working with the VIA Institute on character teams to develop new tools, courses, directions for the practice of character strengths. And she also trains and coaches with the Center for Coaching Certification. Ruth, all of this means you're busy.
Yeah, that was a little much.
Oh, I know. You have humility in there too, right? Sorry to read more about you.
Cringe.
Well, so let's get right into it. I mean, first I want to catch everybody up. What the heck is our strengths? Let's just start there in case there's some folks on the call.
I would love to ask the audience, what do you think character strengths are? If you were going, for those of you who've been looking at them, thinking about them, some of you, I recognize some of your names. How would you describe character strengths to someone else?
Okay, I'm going to put that.
Lisa says courage. What comes more easily and naturally to you? So an interesting thing about that, Judith, is that about 67 to 70% of people don't actually know what their strengths are. They don't recognize that what comes naturally to them is actually a strength. And I have lots of examples of that. Our unique makeup of strengths. One of my favorite examples is a university student whose choice of kind of mental refresh was to walk on Boston Common. Her college was very close to Boston Common. And she would walk there regardless of the time of year and would marvel at the state of nature. You know, isn't it incredible that in the winter, everything looks dead, it doesn't look like it's ever going to come back. And then spring arrives and you see the beginnings of life. And it didn't matter if it was sunny or raining or snowing, she really appreciated nature. And she would go out, walk through the common, come back and get on with her work. And Judith does that in Central Park. I used to do that when I lived in New York. It was one of my favorite things, was just to meander through Central Park. We did the VIA assessment, and number 1 character strength for her was some of you may have guessed already, appreciation of beauty and excellence. And her reaction was twofold. That's a strength, question mark. And everyone doesn't feel that way. And the other students in the room all looked at her like, what's wrong with you? You know, you go to the park. She was a law student, and they tend to be, there's a tendency for them to be high in things like honesty and love of learning, and very many of the strengths that are very typical across the whole population. For the rest of that class, though, they couldn't see what that's about, looking at the trees and feeling this sense of awe and excitement. I was out this morning and looking at the flowers in my backyard, and I saw this little tiny lizard, and he was frozen in place, you know, like, don't see me, I'm green and everything around me is green, so you won't notice me. And I was just transfixed. So I was really, really still as well. And that moment lifted me up. It excited me. I go and say to my husband, we've got a really cute little lizard in the back. He's got long toes. And he's like, okay. Yeah. Appreciation of beauty and excellence isn't, he actually said, didn't we have one of those last year? Appreciation of beauty and excellence for him is something like number 19 or 20. You know, that doesn't come naturally to him, and he doesn't feel that same excitement and benefit. So yeah, as Rachel said, sometimes when it comes easily, it's hard to recognize that it's special and that we have a capacity for it that other people may not share. So the character strengths for us are really, they're the positive aspects of our personality. And of course, we're talking specifically character strengths. That's just one of many kinds of strengths. We have skills, we have talents, we have passions, we have interests. Character strengths are those parts of our personality that are our best parts. And one of the beauties of the character strengths is we only measure the positive aspect of them. When we assess them, we're not ever saying, oh, number 24 is a weakness. It's just a strength that isn't the most energizing, isn't the most effortless, isn't the most exciting to us. And so we have the capacity for any of them. And our highest strengths are the ones that we lean on without necessarily even thinking about it, without even acknowledging that they are special for us.
Let's talk about that a minute. Why is that approach so important, that they're looked at as strengths? They're not looked at in a negative way. I mean, that feels very intentional to me.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. So one is the character strengths was the study of what's best in us. It wasn't an evaluation of what should we have. It wasn't saying, you know, everybody should have 2 teaspoons of zest and 4 teaspoons of spirituality or something like that. It was, let's look at when we're at our best, what are we displaying? And everybody has moments of being their best. Phoebe, before we came on, was talking about that reflection, you know, my best self. I mean, you can think about it during COVID. It's a great exercise. And maybe we'll do some breakouts on that in a minute. When were you at your best in this last year? It's almost exactly a year since I was last here. And then what strengths were you using in that time? Because those strengths are quite likely to be the ones that you can lean on in any situation, good, bad, or indifferent. So it's very important that we focus on, these are measures of who we are at our best. And then we're looking at, okay, me at my best, I'm most likely to be using appreciation of beauty and excellence, bravery, curiosity, fairness, gratitude. Those are my go-to top strengths. Somebody else, in your case, it's leadership and creativity and hope. You know, those are the things that are most likely to manifest when Carolyn is being her best. And so it's not a judgment on you not using or not leaning on other strengths so much. It is identifying when you want to bring out the best in yourself, focus on these strengths that are your powerhouses, you know, and are the things that motivate you and move you forward and give you the capacity to take on challenges. It's not all about, you know, sunshine and roses. It's about navigating difficult times as well. Those strengths are the ones that are most likely to help you get through some challenge as well, because they are core to you.
And the other thing, it seems like, is I can also say, wait a second, if something isn't working in this situation, what do I need more of, right? For example, maybe I'm thinking a lot about the racial injustices and what we've seen that in just come, it's always been there, but come to the surface so much this
Yeah.
year. And one of the core strengths that was indicated as to employ and to use was humility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And depending on where that is in our character strength assessment, that might be one to elevate. So we can also look at a situation and say, what can I elevate? And then the question I have for you is then what is the process of how we do that? But where do you want to start? Do you want to go through the 7 first, or that little meditation?
Well, I would like to do a little meditation first, just to remind anyone who's, maybe not been looking at character strengths recently of what we're talking about. So I invite everybody, you can keep your eyes open or closed, stand, sit, lie down, whatever is comfortable for you, but get grounded. So I'm sitting on a stool. So if you see me wobbling around, I apologize, but it's a balanced stool. So I've got my feet flat on the floor, and I'm kind of in an upright posture in order to maintain balance. And we want to try and make sure that, we're not sticking our heads forward or back or anything like that, but our heads are sort of neatly balanced on the top of our shoulders. And if anyone has got any physical challenges, make the adjustment for you. I know if you're in a wheelchair, for example, certain movements can affect your balance and stuff like that. So figure out that posture of strength for yourself. And then let's start by just taking a really nice, slow breath in. And hold it for a second or two. And then let it out. And then let's just do that one more time. So breathe in through your nose to a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And hold it for a count of 3, 2, 3. And now blow out through your mouth to a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So take this journey with me through the character strengths and the virtues. Think about how you employ your wisdom, starting with creativity. How do you adapt? How are you ingenious and original? How does your curiosity help you to explore new opportunities and new ways of being? How do you use judgment to think things through, weigh things up, consider the evidence, and keep an open mind? How does love of learning support your growing wisdom as you systematically add to your knowledge and share what you know with others? And finally, in this category of character strengths, how about perspective? What is that big picture view? What's another way of looking at this situation? And how about courage? Bravery, so important in these times, speaking up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable, noticing that discomfort, and accepting it and acting anyway. Persevering, continuing to put one foot in front of the other, moving forward slowly, steadily. Honesty, showing your integrity, being true to who you are, living with authenticity. Zest, feeling the energy of being alive, of being here, of having another day. And now turning to humanity, the first of the connection family of strengths, with love as we value close relations with others, the give and take of those close relationships. Kindness, showing care and compassion, not just for others, also ourselves. And social intelligence, paying attention to and being aware of the motives and feelings of ourselves and others. Being open to the idea that another person may feel or see things differently than us. And justice now, teamwork, that combination of social responsibility, loyalty to a larger group, belonging with others and putting the group first, fairness, being just, even-handed, and not letting our feelings bias our views and decisions about others.
The question is, like, you could see it now.
And leadership, encouraging the group to come together to get things done. Temperance, that sometimes most challenging of virtues, that includes forgiveness, giving people a second chance, whoever they may be. And humility, being modest, being aware of the limits of our knowledge. Prudence, having a plan, not taking undue risks, thinking ahead about how you're going to do things. Self-regulation, managing those impulses and emotions, not to squash them, not to deny them, to decide how we react and respond to them. Transcendence, starting with appreciation of beauty and excellence, a feeling of awe and wonder, being elevated by seeing someone else's skill or kindness or some other behavior. Gratitude, not just feeling thankful for the good, expressing that thanks, sharing that thanks, expressing your feelings of being blessed. Hope, not just optimism, but a future-mindedness, where we combine hope and optimism for the future with a plan and steps to get there. Humor, integrating playfulness, bringing smiles to others, creating light-hearted moments, even in times of distress. And spirituality, having that sense of purpose, finding meaning in what we do and how we connect with others. Now just take in one more breath to a count of 3. Hold it for a count of 3, 2, 3. And breathe out through your mouth to a count of 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Hopefully that reacquainted people with character strengths and reminded them maybe of some that they haven't thought of so much in recent times.
Yummy, right? To also, we talked about landing the strengths. We talked about grounding the strengths, and to have that journey felt like that was the embodied physicality of how to do that, right? And it's great that we're recording this because we can listen to this again and again, which I think is really going to be helpful. Let's continue on that path. What do you feel like doing now? Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing this past year and catch us up, or go to the 7?
Well, let's go to we're probably feeling pretty embodied right now. So yeah. Let's go to the 7 characteristics of the strengths-based practitioner. It's one of the things that it's been amazing to watch with Ryan when he does the mindfulness-based strengths practice. That's Dr. Ryan Nemick from the VIA Institute. He has this program that he runs, MBSP, mindfulness-based strengths practice, and he has a questionnaire that you can take during that program to assess whether you are a strengths-based practitioner. And it's fascinating that so many people very quickly go to, yes, I'm a strengths-based practitioner, we're a strengths-based workplace or school or whatever it might be. And again, we're specifically talking about character strengths. When we ask the questions, very often people have an aha moment of, yeah, it's not so much that I'm a strengths-based practitioner. I have character strengths in mind, or I have strengths of some sort in mind. And one of the things we wanted to do in this article was actually give people kind of a roadmap of, this is what we mean when we say strengths-based practitioner. Check in for yourself with these 7 things. So the first, and I think the one that Ryan and I love the most probably, is the embodying character strengths. So it's not just about talking about them or doing the assessment and reading what the results are, but thinking about, how do you manifest those strengths once you know about them? How do you demonstrate them? How do you put them out into the world so that other people can see them and copy that behavior? So that's the embodiment piece. What do they feel like in yourself? So appreciation of beauty and excellence for me is a thrill. It feels like a thrill. And the way I can model that for people is, regardless of my husband saying, it's just a lizard, and we had one of those last year, I can still model the excitement and the thrill and the amazement of seeing something like that. And he may pick up on that for something else. He's very interested in science. So his appreciation of beauty and excellence is some amazing piece of research that comes out. And he's seen me and my reaction and how you express that excitement and enthusiasm. So we're modeling, what do these strengths feel and look like for people? The second attribute is that we're also helping people to understand strengths. So we're educating, we're sharing what the science is behind them. And that's actually another facet to this, is that keeping the science in mind, that this isn't just feel good sort of pop psychology. There's substantial, over 700 studies have been completed now around the character strengths since the original book came out, that show that these deliberate practices, deliberate attention, deliberate focus on seeing and cultivating character strengths, developing character strengths. Carolyn, you mentioned that earlier about how we can develop them. We don't come again with 2 teaspoons of this and 3 teaspoons of that and none of something else, and then we're just stuck in that mode. We can develop strengths. We can partner with people who demonstrate strengths different than ours and see, what does that behavior look like if you're high in a different kind of strength, and start using them as role models, which brings us back to the embodying. So there's science behind this, and we want to share that science with people in a nice, sort of friendly, everyday, over the dinner table kind of a way, not read these articles or whatever it might be, but just being aware that there is real evidence behind this character strengths work. And there's more and more coming all the time. There's still lots of areas for us to study. Being excited about character strengths, demonstrating our character strengths with that sort of energized enthusiasm, so that people see and feel how great the character strengths are. Paying attention to them is energizing and uplifting, and that you can use, demonstrating that you can energize yourself through your character strengths. So if I'm feeling low, for example, and I go outside and I look at the flowers in the backyard, thank goodness it's spring, winter seemed to go on forever, or I see my little lizard. You can tell I'm a little lizard obsessed today. it re-energizes me and gets me excited and ready for whatever's coming next. So we, as a practitioner, we want to be excited and energized by character strengths. We want to be able to show and explain to people how that energizing works, you know, when we leverage strengths that are so core to us. We want to empower other people. So that sort of comes back to the question we were asking in the transition at the beginning of, how do we make this stick? What do we do with it? You know, it's kind of nice. Everybody looks, oh yeah, character strengths, they're great. What do you do next? So we want to empower people to see their own, see strengths in others, and call them out. So one of my favorite practices is to challenge people to use that SEA model. So spot, explain, appreciate, because it empowers people by calling out their character strengths that they may not notice. Remember, 70% of people, or 67 to 70% of people, are character strengths blind. They don't know what their character strengths are. It also gives us a way of becoming more aware of character strengths ourselves. We start looking out for them, and it becomes a more natural practice to call them out, see them. And so it empowers us to be more connected with our own strengths and the strengths of other people, and to have that ripple effect of empowering other people to integrate character strengths awareness into their practices in their life. We want to recognize that, as I said earlier, this isn't all sunshine and roses. No, there's a lot of trouble and challenge. So, Sue, it is SEA, spot, explain, and appreciate. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges in the world, and there always will be, always have been. It feels a little bit like the challenges that we have now are more insurmountable than ones in the past, maybe, who knows. This character strength stuff is not just about the best of times, although it is about the best of us. It is also about navigating adversity and challenge. And as a character strengths practitioner, we want to be able to help people to connect to their character strengths and demonstrate how those character strengths can boost and bolster and support them through difficult times as well. And there's a separate paper by Ryan Nemick about the bolstering and buffering effect of character strengths, that having that awareness and really building our capacity to use our character strengths deliberately can actually help us weather adversity more effectively and feel less stressed and overwhelmed by it. As a character strengths practitioner, we want to build connections through character strengths, and that's one of the things that I love, to connect people together through their character strengths, whether it's that they share top strengths or that they have very different strengths and maybe they can be complementary to each other, exploring how their top strengths support them in the things that they do as a parent, as a person in the workplace, you know, as a community person, whatever it might be. And then finally, we want this idea of cultivation. So as I said before, we're not fixed with your recipe of character strengths as they are today. You can cultivate them. And there are some amazing examples. For example, Michelle McQuaid, who does a lot of work with character strengths in the workplace, she took the assessment a few years ago, 2008, I think it is, if I remember rightly, and she found that love was number 22, and she wasn't happy with that. She didn't like that outcome. So she worked for 2 years on looking for opportunities to cultivate and develop and build her practice, her behaviors around expressing and experiencing love, making more conscious effort to make connections to people one-on-one, spend time with them, you know, be curious about them and so on. And when she took the assessment again a few years later, it had gone up, love had gone up to number 8. So she, you know, didn't turn into necessarily a signature strength. And at the same time, though, she was able to cultivate, you know, she took the seed of that love that we all have all 24 strengths, and she cultivated it until it became a more key part of her everyday practice and existence and belief.
We really are like a garden, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Right? With all of these character strengths like seeds, and I love that you use the word cultivate. And I also wanted you to talk about something that you said a little bit more, which is partnering with people that either have a similar strength or maybe opposite strength to sort of, I believe you said build communication, but also community. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so one of the beauties that I find particularly with teams and groups is that as they discover their own strengths and then get to recognize strengths in other people, they come to value those differing strengths more. So, and realize that another way to access strengths, if you're low in hope or humor, is connect up with someone who isn't low in hope or humor. You know, we all know someone who seems to be able, or maybe we don't. Lots of us know someone that seems to be able to make a joke out of any situation. You know, when you're feeling down and overwhelmed and humor, you can't imagine where you're going to find something funny, connect with that person, because humor is one of their top strengths. We used to have someone on one of our teams where he was the only one with humor as a signature strength in a team of 110 people. So we were a pretty humorless bunch, I have to say. It was a reach. Obviously, humor was distributed, you know, throughout the rest of the profiles. Once we identified, he was very irritating because he never seemed to take anything seriously, and people would be very frustrated by that. Once we recognized who he was, though, and what that strength was, we realized we could actually leverage that. We were working in a very, very stressful situation, and we all needed a bit of humor and playfulness. And he was given free rein to do silly, you know, and come up with some sort of silly idea. And in the middle of the day, he would stand up and say, okay, everybody get up, we're going to do this, you know, and it would be playful. It wasn't necessarily telling a joke. It was just something playful that kind of broke the tension in the room and got people going again. So
it must have been so amazing for him too. I mean, one out of 100 people to be the only one where he has a signature strength of humor, to see sort of be seen and met and elevated for something that he might have had to hide in the past.
And he said, actually, it was very interesting, a little sad to start with. He was always the person on the outside. He happened to be a very big guy as well, tall and broad and, you know, fairly heavy. And he said to me one day in a moment of vulnerability, I just really don't feel comfortable on this team because he felt sort of larger than everybody else. He felt louder than everyone else. He felt like his perspective wasn't appreciated. We did the character strengths and he got integrated into the team because people recognized they needed it. You know, they needed what he had. And that when it's used well, that doesn't mean to say he was never irritating again. You know, there were times when he told jokes at times that didn't feel appropriate to other people. It's not perfect. And at the same time, people knew he was trying to help, that he was trying to lighten the mood, that he was, you know, so there was a different perspective on it. And he went from being the person that was always like that penguin who's on the outside of the group, you know, when they're huddled together, to being fully in the group and being sort of welcome and feeling that he had a place. And the impact that he had on the team from a work perspective improved because he felt so much more engaged in what we're doing. He was a business analyst and he just really jumped in and started doing stuff that, you know, he'd not paid attention to before. So because he felt seen and appreciated.
Wow. Going on to a more personal level, last year when we were talking, you were talking about your husband, right? And how you were like, oh my goodness, how are we going to survive in this house
survive
together?
COVID.
And right, with COVID. And in some ways, what we're talking about now, which is opposite character strengths or appreciating character strengths, can even help in intimate relationships. So how was it useful for you knowing what your husband's strength was and what yours were?
Well, so there were a couple of things. So right before COVID started, and I might have mentioned this last year for anyone who was here, we were having one of those times in a marriage where, you know, everything the other person does is just not what you want them to do. And it was mutual, you know, it was just like, why did you leave that there? What did you do this for? All small stuff, of course, because it's always the small stuff that really gets under our skin. And then they announced COVID and that we were going to have a lockdown. And I was like, we're very privileged to have a decent size, a pretty large house for two people. So it wasn't going to be that hard to avoid each other, but I didn't feel like I could go through months and months of lockdown just avoiding him, you know, and like if he was in the living room, I would be somewhere else. And so two things. One is, and the COVID situation, of course, added to it because we were both stressed in our own way around what does this mean? What's going to happen? Are we going to get sick? We each have, you know, health concerns that made us more vulnerable potentially to COVID. And so there was that worry. It turned out that we had just been in New York as New York was turning into the epicenter of COVID, but didn't know it yet. So then we wondered whether we'd been exposed. So there was a lot of stress, as it was for everybody. So I put myself on a 30-day strength spotting plan. And every day before I went to bed, I had to spot a strength in my husband. And there were times where my teeth were cleaned, I was in my pajamas and tucked up in bed, and I'd think, I didn't do the strength spotting. And I would go back down and I would spot the strength from something that had happened during the day, explain how I saw it, and tell him why I appreciated it. Now, the truth is, he thought that was one of my most irritating qualities because he thought I was trying to coach him. But what it did for me was realize that all those small things, you know, the things he does, like leaving stuff in the sink, and all, really did not matter, because when it comes down to it, he has these amazing qualities, like the world's largest retirement spreadsheet that he's analyzed everything so that he can forecast, if we do this now, what does that do in terms of the longevity of our retirement and our savings and all of this? We don't know if his spreadsheet is perfect, but it's very sophisticated. And those things are what matters, not that cup in the sink. You know, it's like the cup's in the sink and the dishwasher's right there. Why couldn't you go the extra 3 feet to the dishwasher? You know, it's like, please. And I came to realize by doing the strength spotting for 30 days that rather than being irritated by spending COVID lockdown with him, there wasn't anyone else in the world it would be better to spend COVID lockdown with. And he's very curious. He always wants to hear both sides of things. During the election here, Wendy, I don't know, we can find out. He's been here full time, so, you know, don't know what's going on there. Yeah, during the election, he came up with the idea that we should have 2 televisions so that we could have both sets of coverage, not just the election, but the run-up, so that we could see both sides of the coverage, you know, and not just get a one-sided view. And I was like, how many people would do that for me? You know, most people would say 2 televisions, that's just going to be crazy. You know, how will we do that? And we'd have one with captions on, and the other one we would have the sound on, because we're both blessed with being able to listen to it. And it was huge to be able to do those things. We had lots and lots of COVID arguments, and still do. And it always comes back to that at his core, he's a man of strengths. He's a man full of very irritating habits as well. And he's a man of strengths. He has extraordinary capacities that I just have to remind myself of for the other things to just seem less important, and I can walk away.
Beautiful. And I know Wendy's, and I see some bunch of people nodding their heads. And Wendy said earlier that, you know, my husband and I have opposite strengths, and that explained many things and helped us quite a bit. So what we're talking really about
well, actually, before you go on, Caroline, I will say one thing that is key to the source of arguments for us is we're both high in fairness. And those fairness arguments about what's going on in the world, even though fundamentally we agree, can be the most animated, heated arguments, because the way we express fairness, and there's fairness in process, there's fairness in outcome, there's different facets to fairness, and the way we evaluate something as being fair is different. So, and it's always frustrating, because at the end we go, you know, we basically agree. I don't even know why we're arguing, but to get there to that agreement, we have to go through this sort of process versus outcome heated argument to come to the conclusion that basically, you know, in the end, we both feel the same way about the thing. So having the same strengths can really, really be a cause of friction as well. If you express those strengths, as most people do, we have our own way of personal way of expressing the strengths. If we're coming at those strengths in a different way, then they can be a source of friction too, even though you share them.
So you're bringing up something very interesting about character strengths. not exactly the pitfalls, but the fact that in a human, we have different ways, different flavors of expressing or experiencing a strength. And how can we get into, like you said, how can we navigate or even realize that, wait a minute, this might be exactly what you said with fairness. This is how he expresses it, and this is how I express it. And now that kind of creates some friction. And now that we're aware of that, we can be on the lookout for it.
Mhm.
But how do you do that? How does one identify that as I use the word pitfall, but I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
And another one, someone was asking in the chat about the potential to overuse and underuse our strengths, particularly overuse. With our signature strengths, we're most likely to overuse them because they're so natural. We go to them. So when under stress, what do? We go to the things that come most naturally to us, and we rely on them. And there's that sort of old joke about the definition of insanity being when you keep doing the same thing and expecting the same, different outcome, right? And some of it is a habit that we go to. So bravery is one of my top strengths, which is a blessing and a curse, because I sometimes don't know when to stop making the argument. It's like I am on this road, and for someone else it's like we've crossed a line, where I'm being sort of too pushy and too aggressive and not using enough social intelligence to say, okay, we need to kind of back off this conversation or whatever it might be. And these things like hot buttons and points of friction can be quite difficult to navigate because we tend to react first and think after, especially when it comes to something that's so sort of integral to us. So for me, that's that balance of mindfulness and character strengths. So being able to take that step back and observing what is the impact of my use of strengths in this case. And if it's hurting you or hurting someone else, you probably want to balance out that strength with something else. So with the fairness thing, I will try to engage kindness, and sort of, yeah, okay, I get it. This is your perspective. This is the way you see fairness. I don't see it that way, but I respect and honor the fact that you do see it that way, and that I can make space for that. It doesn't mean to say that I don't react first and have to apologize later. So
it sounds like we're going from the garden to the kitchen, and that right, and that there's like a recipe. Okay, what in this situation? All right, what can I use? Maybe I've gone too far. Oh, what can I use? What other ingredient?
Yeah, what ingredient can you use to balance it out? Yes,
yeah.
Very much so. So if you've over sweetened it, what are you going to use to sort of reduce the sweet taste or whatever it might be? And
in an authentic way. Barbara Fredrickson was here, and she was talking about how we can't put it on. We can't pretend, right? People feel that. We're so intelligent, right? So it can't be like, oh, I'm going to be loving. It's not going to work. We're too smart. We'll pick it up. So how do you, when you say you incorporate kindness, is it again that felt sense like you saw with the lizard? Like I experienced that as a thrill. So is it tapping into, wait, how do I experience kindness? I experience that as a warmth. So let me get in touch with that warmth and then bring that to them.
That's a really interesting question, because I've never actually thought about it. I'm someone that comes from the behavior point of view, and I absolutely take the point about the the sort of authenticity and integrity. My question to myself is, when I'm being kind, how do I act? And then triggering that action helps me to feel the feeling that goes with being kindness. Being kind, sorry. That's my practice, is what's my behavior going to look like? But for other people, it might be that embodiment. What do I feel like? When is a time I've felt a kind, warm feeling towards this person? And how can I bring that feeling forth now? And then that influences your behavior. So it's all, you can sort of go into that cycle of thought, action, thought, behavior, feeling, anywhere in the circle, depending on who you are and what works for you. So for me, it's more that cognitive thing of, okay, so what steps would I take if I wanted to be kind now? For someone else, it might be more kinesthetic of, let me experience the feeling and then I'll know what to do.
Right. And I love that you said, that the mindfulness is almost the connective tissue, right? It's like using that mindfulness. And it's like what Viktor Frankl said, right? In between stimulus and response, there was a pause. There was a moment in which we can choose. Amanda was asking, what about how to navigate opposite strengths with a partner when you don't feel like your excitement or awe from your strength, for example, your lizard, are being validated, met, or appreciated? It can feel like a bummer when you are excited about something you share and are met with indifference or no enthusiasm or appreciation. It can be a lonely feeling.
Yes, and it's very true, Amanda. So a couple of thoughts come to mind for me, and this is personal experience. So I will share another story that I may have shared last year as well. I used to live in Western Mass. I'm now in North Carolina. I used to live in Western Massachusetts, and we were in the Berkshire Mountains, as it's called. I mean, to call them mountains is just crazy. They're hills. By my measure, coming from Europe, they're hills, not mountains. But we were in the Berkshire Mountains, and it's absolutely gorgeous in spring and summer and into fall, totally amazingly beautiful. And there's a big historic house there called a summer cottage, but it's absolutely huge, that was built originally by the owner to have a big picture window so that they could look out onto the hills and see the trees and all the nature in front of them, and also see the storms coming over the hills, because we used to get a lot of thunderstorms in the summer there, and they would come in over the hills and then kind of settle over the town, and you could watch this through this amazing picture window. So my husband and I were visiting the historic house, and we were looking out of the window, and I was just amazed at how many shades of green there are in the trees. It's like this tree and that tree, they're green, but they're not the same green, and there were hundreds, maybe thousands of trees ahead of us, and no two of them seemed to be the same color. And I said to my husband, look at that amazing view. It was perfect blue sky. There was, clouds, those fluffy white clouds that sort of blow past in the breeze, they were going, it was a perfect summer day. And I said to my husband, isn't that an amazing view? And he said, I don't know, it just looks green to me. Which struck me as ironic, because green is his favorite color. So I thought that might be a moment of connection. And I had that sinking feeling, Amanda, of I've got no one to share this with in this moment. This person doesn't see how exciting this is. And then I suddenly realized I'm excited. And in that moment, that's all that matters. Yes, to share it is amazing. And I will take a photo and share with someone else, oh, look where I was today. I go looking for someone who does appreciate that. I was fortunate to have an amazing neighbor when I lived there who loved all things nature. I will be sending her a photo of the lizard later, and she's going to be in awe. So it's that finding who is that person in that moment that can give you that sort of feedback of, oh yeah, I'm excited too. And just for me, it's learning to respect that that's just not what floats my husband's boat. So, and that's not a, weakness on his part or a failing, or I don't want him, as you were saying before, Barbara Fredrickson said, don't be fake. And she, of course, is very close to me. She's at UNC Chapel Hill. We can't afford to be fake. So I don't want him to say, oh yeah, that's amazing. What an amazing view, because you know what you're going to do. You're going to say, what do you like about it? And he's going to have nothing, because he doesn't really have anything, he doesn't really particularly like it. So alternatives, if you don't have that person, Joy, I suggest that it's always possible to find that person somehow online. So that, there might be maybe groups, I don't know for certain, but people who used to do the sort of nature walks and things like that, where we've had to be inside, I think a lot of them have gone online and are sharing photos and things like that. Finding a group online that shares your interest, and being brave and joining that group, finding someone, asking friends who they know in their network who might be interested in something that you're interested in that other people aren't. A friend of a friend is the easiest way to connect with people. I say that as someone who doesn't have a huge network of friends. So I know for some people it's going to be, well, I don't actually have that many friends, but we can find, the key thing I was saying was I found that person. I went looking for that person. I didn't wait for them to arrive, because I realized my husband was never going to be that person. And it still frustrates me. And I wish he could get excited about the lizard, I know this person who now, you know, I don't even live next door to her anymore. I know she will get excited by the photo of the lizard, and it's completely sincere. So it can take a while. It took me years to find someone who had that kind of enthusiasm.
You know, also, Ruth, I was thinking about like the brain, the body, the heart, we're so intelligent when we just put it out there that that's what we're looking for. Suddenly, as Don Tomasullo said, you know, if we're focusing, let's say, ahead, and then a book falls from the shelf, it changes our perspective. Where our attention goes changes our perspective. So even just being aware that that's something I need or that's something I want opens up the opportunity for that to come to us. And I was thinking about that sort of shifts us seamlessly into your work with groups. You've said before that you know, not necessarily like working with one-on-one, but your work with groups. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about strength spotting in a group, developing character strengths in a group, group coaching, why that appeals to you so much. Is it the community aspect of it?
It's a lot of things. It is the community aspect. It's the fact that there's so much wisdom in the room. And it doesn't matter who it could be, you know, a group of 5-year-olds or a group of 75-year-olds or 85-year-olds or 105-year-olds. They all have their own special wisdom and their way of looking at things. And so one of the things I love as a coach is it's not on me to advise people. You know, I'm helping them to explore what resources they have, what mechanisms they have, what strengths they have in order to be able to accomplish what they want to accomplish. And at the same time, sometimes there's that feeling of, why haven't you looked this up on Google? And when you're in a group, someone in the group will say that. So it alleviates that. There's always someone who's going to just throw out the idea and say, have you thought of doing this? Or why haven't you done that? Or you can go to this website or whatever it is. And so that they do share the answer. It's usually better received than if the coach said it, because there's no power, you know, there's no sort of, it's not the coach telling you what to do. It's a fellow participant giving an idea. And so it's processed in a different way. So I love that. But also I love seeing as the groups work together, that they start to really naturally integrate that strength spotting. And one of the great moments when we do group coaching is somewhere around the middle. We do 5 session sort of sets of coaching. Somewhere around the middle, end of session 2, beginning of session 3, you'll see the first couple of people who start spotting strengths in other people in the room. And then that catches on. And they start, oh, well, you know, when you were telling that story, I could hear how much perseverance there was in that. And then the other person will say, well, perseverance is kind of a low strength for me. And that kind of explains why I was coming home every night totally exhausted, you know, because I was having to engage a strength. I needed to use that strength. I did use that strength, and yet it doesn't come naturally to me. So it was hard work. So I love the way they learn from each other, and they bring this richness of stories that are much richer than, you know, one coach can bring, and experiences. Like I said, one of my partner coaches was on our United in Strength yesterday, and she told a really personal story of real challenge and difficulty that is like no other person's story, probably. And so they get a richness. The groups also get the richness of being exposed to the different coaches. It's not just me and a group or me and a person. Different coaches coach the different groups on different days and things like that. So they get the different perspective of the different coaches. So it's broadening. It's that, Barbara Fredrickson would say, broaden and build, you know, it's that broadening that horizon, widening that network, getting inputs from new places. And as you can tell, it excites me. So.
Well, it also sounds like another way to experience your strength, love of beauty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And,
absolutely. Yeah, and I'm very, very privileged to work with a group of 12 coaches who every single one of them is amazing in their own way, and very diverse group of people. Their experiences are completely different from each other. They come at coaching from completely different angles. They all do one-on-one coaching, and they all have different focuses, from helping people get over addiction to body image problems to successful career changes and so on. So it's a really
right. So that stimulates your beauty and excellence.
Yes.
I wanted to talk. Barbara Fredrickson was saying, we're kind of out of practice with being in groups, right? How can we use our strengths or strength spotting to help us learn how to socialize again and get it back into groups again? She said, let's face it, we're going to be a little rusty, right? Picking up social cues. And it struck me that maybe we could use strength spotting or our strengths to help us navigate that transition from being sort of inside and with our pods to going out into groups more. Is there any, since you manage and groups so much, is there anything that we can do or as we think about that?
You probably know the answer already. See those strengths, SEA. One of the things that I think we have an amazing opportunity for is, yes, we're going to be kind of rusty. And at the same time, some of us were not terribly good. And I'll put my hand up and say, I wasn't terribly good at, integrating into the world in the first place. We have an opportunity to have a do-over and a restart. And we can start by going out into the world, whether that's online or in person, and spotting strengths and sharing that wonderful uplifting moment that people get when you see them for a moment. And one of the things I love to do, and I haven't been able to do it in months, is to spot strengths in the checkout person at stores. Because if you watch them carefully, they always have something that they do really, really well. Even the grouchy ones, there's something that they do, that they're really focused on or they pay attention to and they're meticulous about in some way or other. And to call that out, it's amazing. It's like the sun's come out. And so doing that anywhere we go, whether it's people on the phone or online, as I said, or in person, making that effort to push ourselves to spot something positive in someone else, I think will help us to develop better skills of getting back into groups than we had when groups were cancelled. So,
can you give us a little hint on the why that matters part?
Oh, yeah. A little hint or a big hint. I do just want to answer the question. Wendy asked the difference and similarity between strengths and personal values. And that's a question that comes up. VIA used to stand for values in action, and we got rid of that. It's just called VIA now. So, we get to things via our character strengths. Values are kind of beliefs and core things that we're very connected to. They don't necessarily result in action. So to me, values and action are separate. And that's why it was values in action, is that our character strengths are the things that we believe to our core, feel to our core, experience as core to ourselves, and act upon and take out and show in the world and influence how we interact with other people, what we choose to do in terms of putting ourselves out there. So it's doing and being. Values to me is a little more about being and less doing, and some of the other strengths are about doing and less being. Character strengths are about doing and being. How do you feel about something? What's important to you, and what do you do about it? And as to why it's important, well, Barbara Fredrickson probably talked about, I was not able to attend her session, unfortunately, because I was teaching that day. But she probably talked about how we're wired towards negativity. We're always looking out for risk and danger and threat and what is this person going to do to us that we don't want them to do. And so that deliberate activity of highlighting positives in people, first of all, demonstrates to them that you are looking at them in that way. So it's a great trust building and safety. There's a lot of work out there, like Amy Edmondson's work about safety in the workplace, psychological safety and all of that kind of stuff. And us putting ourselves out there vulnerably, saying to someone maybe we don't know very well, I see this in you and this is how I saw it and this is why I appreciate it, opens up the possibility for them that A, there's more good about them than maybe they were aware of, B, that people in the world aren't dangerous. You're modeling that it can be safe to be in front of someone and be seen by someone, because what's going to come back is some positive feedback. So we're counterbalancing some of that natural tendency to go, this is a dangerous place, and to demonstrate by doing something that it might not be quite as dangerous as people perceive it to be.
And Barbara Fredrickson also said that in order for positive emotions to occur, positivity to occur, we need safety. So
Yes.
you're just reinforcing that. Wow, Ruth, the time just flew by.
And we never had those breakouts, so I apologize.
I know.
You at your best during COVID. Please share with us, because I'm sure you've got
Yes.
fascinating. Take a few moments and think about those character strengths we went through, and think about a moment in COVID where you really feel like you brought your best to the fore, and what strengths were up front and center during that time. And they might be your signature strengths, or it might be a time when you really reached deep and pulled out some strengths that are a little harder to use. But think about that. You know, what were you using at that moment, and how can you learn from that to face your next challenge or your next
And we have a question of how do we connect with you, Ruth?
Yes, so you can email me at, probably easiest to email me at the via email, because it's just Ruth P, like Peter, at viacharacter.org. I can put that in the chat. I'll also give you my other, thank you, Phoebe. And it's also Ruth Pearce, Pearce, at projectmotivator.com. That's my own company. And then the Monday evening sessions, you can register for those on the VIA website. If you go to the VIA website, look for COVID resources, you'll see that we do United in Strengths, is what it's called, and 5 o'clock Eastern every Monday. We have not missed a Monday yet. Every Monday we have a session, and we do some meditation, we talk about character strengths, we explore, and we have different formats. Sometimes we involve we have small breakout groups, other times it is the audience asks questions. We have guests, we have Ryan talking about character strengths. If we have 5 Mondays in a month, the 5th Monday is me leading a character strength spotting exercise. So we have lots of different ways of integrating the character strengths.
Fantastic. So we can learn more. Isn't that amazing, everybody? Please put into the chat a little love for Ruth, to thank her for everything that she has brought today. I certainly have learned a lot, and it's reinforced for me the importance of not only strength spotting in others, but even strength spotting in myself too, right?
Yeah, look out for them. They're special. They are special.
Yeah.
And the other way to connect with me, by the way, is to just look me up on LinkedIn. That's another possibility. I'm on LinkedIn.
There you go. Excellent storytelling, generosity.
This was wonderful, Caroline. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming again.
And thank you, Phoebe.
Always good to see you. And say hi to your husband and thank him for being a
yeah,
great
he doesn't like being used as a guinea pig, so
maybe we won't tell him.
Yeah,
all right,
we'll just send him
Phoebe,
love.
anything you want to say? You want to pop on and say anything? Are you good?
Thank you. You embody applied practice, Ruth. So just thanks so much. And I'm hoping you're seeing the chat. Everyone is just strength spotting you and loving on you. So thank you. And Caroline, gorgeous conversation. Go out and use your strengths.
All right, everyone.
Bye.
Go out and use your strengths.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye to everyone if you would like. It's your time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Caroline. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ruth.